Hi there, it's Scott here for the curling store, and today we're going to talk about the different slider thicknesses that are available with curling shoes. So with this, well, a lot of new people that come into the curling store, when we start talking about the thickness of slider, they really have no idea what we're talking about. And it's pretty much the most critical element of the shoe outside of comfort, because the slider allows you to slide out. So there's pretty much 5 different thicknesses of slider. We kind of narrow it down to 3 to make it simple. So we have a 16th inch slider, which is the thinnest slider that you can get, offers the most amount of resistance when pushing out, to the 5/32 3/16 slider, which is kind of middle of the road, to your 1/4 inch, which is the least amount of resistance. And what happens is when you have a thin slider, you're sliding on pebbled ice, and the pebbled ice has bumps all over it. So when you have a thin slider, it bends more. When you push out, it creates friction. So you have to push harder on a thin slider than what you do on a thicker slider. Previously, we used to sell, if you were a brand new curler, we'd always put you in the thinnest slider. We thought it was the safest, and we thought you'd eventually develop into the thicker sliders. But what we were seeing with our customers was every year or every 2 years, those people that had just bought shoes were coming in buying new shoes, wanting something with less resistance because it's actually easier to slide on. So now we pretty much skip that step and typically recommend a 5/32 slider to your brand new curler, or someone who's always used a thin slider that's looking for a little bit more push out of the hack. A simple way to get that is upgrading to a thicker slider. Not that new curlers can't use the 1/4 inch slider. About 25% of all of our sales is the 1/4 inch slider, and I've had brand new curlers go to that slider. The learning curve is larger because it does have the least amount of resistance, but once you get used to the thickest slider, you never have to learn again. If you start on a mid-range slider or a very thin slider, you're constantly changing your slide to accommodate for the different speeds. So when you push with a shoe like this, for example, a mid-range slider, and you're trying to throw a guard, if you push with the same amount of effort in your mind that you want to throw a guard with the 1/4 inch, that's going to end up landing on the button. So definitely, especially with your first pair, when you're just getting out on the ice and learning how to curl, don't be afraid of the thicker slider. And actually, if anything, you should lean towards a thicker slider. Most curlers that are being taught and learn curls now are being taught to sweep with a gripper on. The perception is it's a little bit safer, whereas back in the day, everybody used to slide and sweep. So yeah, if you had a thicker slider that's more slippery and you're sweeping, it may be a little bit safer to go with something a little bit thinner. But the only time your slider is touching the ice at this point with most curlers now is only when you're throwing the stone. So make that as easy as you can when you're sliding out of the hack. If you think about it like riding a bike up a hill, when you ride a bike up a hill, at first you're going up the hill, your handlebars are moving, you're fighting against friction, you crest the top of the hill, you start to go down, there's less friction, it's much easier to maintain your balance. And that's the same concept with curling sliders. So don't be afraid to go with something a little bit thicker. It does cost a little bit more money, but it's going to help you develop. Your technique's going to be a little bit better. And at first it won't be, but eventually your balance will be better when you're sliding out of the hack, which is going to make you make more shots, and it's going to make you enjoy it more. So if you have any questions about slider thickness, certainly give us a call, shoot us off an email, or check out our buying guides, which has some information about slider thickness as well. And check out more of our videos at thecurlingstore.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel.